In the Boston area, people were rattled by a massive double boom yesterday that shook the earth.
The booming sound sent police in Massachusetts just scrambling, trying to figure out what caused it. Listen to this.
You'd hear something else from my Ring camera if I heard that.
What
oh my
the
goodness.
bleep?
Yeah, right? Turns out it was a sonic boom from a meteor. The American Meteor Society says it was about 3 feet wide, the meteor. It received dozens of reports from Delaware all the way up to Montreal with people hearing the boom, double boom, feeling the ground shake, or seeing a fireball in the sky. And there is a satellite image to prove it. NOAA captured this burst over the New England coastline around the same time. Meteors usually burn up before they hit the ground. Experts say any debris could have landed in the ocean.
So thank goodness that thing's going out to sea. We don't want to deal with that.
Imagine standing inside your home on an ordinary afternoon, and suddenly the sky explodes. Not a storm, not an earthquake, not a military test. A massive double boom tears through the air. Windows begin to rattle, houses shake, and people across Massachusetts rush outside asking the same question. For a few terrifying moments, nobody had an answer. Police were flooded with reports. Residents looked toward the sky. Some thought there had been an explosion nearby. Others wondered if a plane had broken the sound barrier. And then, as more reports started coming in from Delaware all the way up to Montreal, the truth became even more shocking. It was a meteor. A space rock, barely 3 feet wide, had entered Earth's atmosphere at extreme speed, exploded high above the northeastern United States, and released an atmospheric blast estimated to be equivalent to 300 tons of TNT. And here is the part that makes this story so unsettling. It never touched the ground. It exploded roughly 40 miles above the surface, far above the cities and homes that felt its shock wave. But even from that altitude, the blast was powerful enough to shake buildings, rattle windows, and send a wave of confusion across an entire region. This was not just a flash in the sky. This was a reminder that Earth is constantly moving through a dangerous cosmic shooting gallery, and most of the time, we only notice when something burns bright enough, loud enough, or violently enough to make us look up. The event happened near the end of May, when residents across the Northeast began reporting a bright fireball streaking across the sky. Around the same time, people in the Boston area heard what many described as a massive boom, or even a double boom. It was sudden, sharp, and strong enough to make the ground feel like it had shifted underneath them. At first, there was confusion. When something that loud happens in the middle of the day, the human mind does not immediately think of outer space. People think of explosions. They think of accidents. They think of something happening nearby, something physical, something dangerous, something close. And that is exactly why this story spread so quickly. Because the sound did not match the size of the object. A meteor only about 0.9 meters wide does not sound like something that should shake homes. It does not sound like something that should be heard across such a massive distance. It does not sound like something that should create a blast measured in hundreds of tons of TNT. But speed changes everything. When a meteor enters Earth's atmosphere, it is not drifting gently downward like a stone dropped from the sky. It is screaming through the upper atmosphere at extraordinary velocity, often anywhere from 25,000 to 160,000 miles per hour. At those speeds, the air in front of it is compressed violently. Heat builds rapidly. Pressure increases. The object begins to burn, crack, and break apart. And when that breakup happens suddenly, the sky itself becomes the blast zone. That is what experts believe happened over the Northeast. According to NASA's assessment, the meteor appeared to fragment at an altitude of around 40 miles over northeast Massachusetts and southeast New Hampshire. That breakup released energy estimated at about 300 tons of TNT, explaining the loud boom that shocked people on the ground. But that was only the beginning of the mystery. Because residents were not just hearing the event. Some were seeing it. Reports described a bright fireball cutting across the sky. People from multiple states saw the flash. Others only heard the sound. Some felt the shock wave. And as the witness report spread, scientists began looking for hard evidence. That evidence came from above. NOAA satellite data captured a distinctive burst over the New England coastline at nearly the same time people were reporting the boom below. This was not just a regular camera image. Satellites can detect sudden flashes and energy signatures in the atmosphere, the kind of signal created when an object from space enters at high speed and releases a huge amount of energy. That data helped confirm what had happened. The sky had not been struck by a missile. There was no known aircraft explosion. This was not an earthquake rumbling from below. It was a meteor entering the atmosphere, breaking apart under extreme pressure and sending a shockwave down toward the ground. And this is where the story gets even more serious. Because the Massachusetts event did not happen in isolation. In recent months, similar fireball events have been reported over other parts of the United States, including Ohio and Texas. One meteor exploded over Ohio, creating a sonic boom. Another fireball over Texas generated a shock wave and scattered meteorites across parts of the Houston area. A mysterious blast in South Carolina also fueled speculation before officials suggested it was consistent with a sonic boom, though the exact source remained under investigation. To scientists, these events are part of a natural process. Earth is constantly being hit by small fragments of space debris. Most of them burn up harmlessly high above the surface. Many are never noticed by the public at all. But to the people underneath them, the experience is anything but ordinary. Because when a meteor explodes overhead, it does not feel like an abstract scientific event. It feels immediate. It feels physical. It feels like something has gone wrong. A flash in the sky. A delayed boom. A house shaking. A window rattling. Community suddenly trying to understand whether the danger came from the ground, the air, or somewhere far beyond the planet. That is why events like this trigger public anxiety so quickly. The average person does not spend every day thinking about the fact that Earth is moving through space at enormous speed, surrounded by debris left behind by comets, asteroids, and ancient collisions. We live our lives under what feels like a stable sky. We look up and see clouds, sunlight, stars, maybe a plane passing overhead. But the truth is much less peaceful. Above us, small objects enter the atmosphere all the time. Most burn up silently. Some create flashes. A few are large enough, dense enough, or fast enough to create fireballs. And when one breaks apart with enough force, the result can be a sonic boom powerful enough to be mistaken for an explosion. That is exactly what happened here. The meteor was small, but the energy was not. And this is the part many people misunderstand. The size of the object alone does not tell the whole story. A 3-foot rock from space is not dangerous because of its size in the way a boulder on the ground is dangerous. It is dangerous because of its speed. At tens of thousands of miles per hour, even a small object carries enormous kinetic energy. When that energy is suddenly released in the atmosphere, it can produce a blast wave. That blast wave travels outward. It pushes through the air. It reaches the ground as a boom. Sometimes as multiple booms, depending on the object's path, speed, angle, and fragmentation. That may explain why many people described what they heard as a double boom. The first shock can come from the object moving faster than sound. The second can come from the fragmentation itself, the moment the meteor breaks apart and releases energy almost instantly. To the people below, those shock waves can arrive close together, creating the impression of two explosions. And that is what made the Massachusetts event so dramatic. It was not just heard in one neighborhood. It was reported across a wide area. People from Delaware to Montreal either heard the boom, saw the fireball, or felt the effects. That kind of geographic spread shows how powerful and visible these atmospheric events can become, even when the object itself never reaches the surface intact. The question, then, is not whether this was natural. The question is why something natural can feel so alarming. Part of the answer is timing. In a world already full of tension, sudden explosions in the sky immediately create speculation. People wonder about missiles. They wonder about aircraft. They wonder about military activity. They wonder whether officials are telling them everything. And when the first reports are scattered, incomplete and emotional, rumors fill the space before science does. That is why the NOAA and NASA data mattered so much. The satellite detection gave the event a measurable signature. The timing matched the reports from the ground. The location aligned with sightings near the Boston region. NASA's analysis gave an altitude and an energy estimate. Together, those pieces turned public confusion into a clearer scientific picture. A meteor entered the atmosphere. It fragmented high above the northeast. It produced a fireball. It released energy equivalent to hundreds of tons of TNT. It created a sonic boom heard and felt across a large region. But even with that explanation, the event still leaves behind an uncomfortable truth. We can explain what happened, but we could not stop it from happening. And for small meteors like this one, that is usually acceptable because most burn up before reaching the ground. But the same physics that makes this event fascinating also makes larger events potentially dangerous. A bigger object, entering at a different angle, surviving deeper into the atmosphere, or exploding lower above a populated area, could produce much more severe effects. That is why scientists monitor near-Earth objects. That is why satellites matter. That is why public reporting matters. Every fireball is more than just a spectacle. It is data. It helps experts understand the size, speed, path, breakup altitude, and energy release of objects entering our atmosphere. And yet, for the people in Massachusetts that day, none of that data arrived in the first second. In that first second, there was only the boom. A sound powerful enough to make people stop what they were doing. A shock wave strong enough to make homes feel vulnerable. A flash bright enough to be captured from space. And perhaps the most disturbing part is how quickly it happened. There was no warning siren. No public alert before the blast. No countdown. No chance for people to prepare. Just an ordinary afternoon, suddenly interrupted by a piece of space debris turning into a fireball above New England. That is what makes this story so compelling. It sits at the intersection of science, fear, and public trust. Science tells us this was natural. Fear tells us it felt like an attack. Public trust depends on how quickly officials and experts can explain the difference. And in this case, the evidence pointed clearly toward a meteor. NOAA captured the burst. NASA described the fragmentation. The American Meteor Society collected reports from witnesses. The pattern of sightings and sounds matched what scientists expect from a meteor entering and breaking apart in the atmosphere. But the public reaction still matters. Because when people hear a boom that shakes their home, they do not experience it as a chart, a data point, or a satellite signature. They experience it as a threat. And in an age where every strange event is immediately filmed, posted, debated, and questioned online, even a natural meteor can become a national mystery within minutes. That is exactly what happened. A small object from space became a massive public question. Was it a missile? Was it an aircraft? Was it an explosion? Was it something being hidden? And then, piece by piece, the story changed. The mystery became a meteor. The boom became a sonic shockwave. The flash became satellite-confirmed evidence. The fear became a lesson in what happens when cosmic debris collides with Earth's atmosphere at unimaginable speed. But the lesson is not simply that meteors exist. Everyone knows meteors exist. The lesson is that even a small one can remind an entire region how fragile normal life can feel when the sky suddenly behaves in a way nobody expects. 1 second, people are going about their day. The next, police are scrambling. Residents are calling in reports, and scientists are checking satellite data to determine whether the blast came from nature or something else. And this is where the story becomes bigger than Massachusetts. Because these events force us to ask how prepared we are to communicate quickly when something unusual happens overhead. They force us to ask how much the public understands about fireballs, sonic booms, and atmospheric explosions. They force us to confront the gap between what scientists know and what ordinary people feel in the moment. To an expert, a meteor exploding at 40 miles altitude may be explainable. To a family sitting in a shaking house, it feels like the world just cracked open. That emotional gap is where panic begins. And that is why clear information matters. The NOAA satellite data was not just a technical detail. It was the piece that helped anchor the story in evidence. The NASA explanation was not just a scientific note. It was the answer to a region asking why the sky had roared. Without that data, the rumors would have grown louder. Because when people see a fireball and hear a massive boom, uncertainty becomes fuel. Social media spreads guesses faster than agencies can confirm facts. The longer the silence lasts, the more dramatic the theories become. But the facts here are already dramatic enough. A meteor roughly the size of a small piece of furniture entered the atmosphere at extreme speed. It became a fireball visible across a wide region. It broke apart high above the ground. It released energy comparable to 300 tons of TNT. Its shock wave reached homes, windows, and people across the Northeast. That does not need exaggeration. The truth is already cinematic. And it also reminds us that Earth's atmosphere is not just empty space above our heads. It is a shield. Every day it absorbs impacts we never see. It burns up debris that would otherwise reach the surface. It turns cosmic threats into streaks of light. But sometimes, the shield makes noise. Sometimes, it flashes bright enough for satellites to record. Sometimes it booms loud enough for entire communities to stop and listen. Sometimes it reminds us that the planet is protected, but not isolated. The Massachusetts meteor was not a catastrophe. It did not become a disaster on the ground. There is no indication from the provided reports that it caused widespread damage. Experts described it as a natural phenomenon caused by a space rock breaking apart in the atmosphere. But the fear it created was real. The confusion was real. The shock wave was real. And the message was real. The sky is not as quiet as it looks. For the people who heard that double boom, this was not just another science story. It was a moment when the invisible became undeniable. A reminder that objects from deep space do not need to be huge to be powerful. They only need speed, mass, and the right angle to turn an ordinary afternoon into a regional mystery. And as more fireballs are reported in different parts of the country, public attention will only grow. Some of that attention will be scientific. Some will be fearful. Some will be filled with speculation. But underneath all of it is one basic reality. Earth is constantly being struck by material from space. And most of the time, the atmosphere saves us before we even know there was a threat. That is what happened over the Northeast. A small meteor came in fast. The atmosphere tore it apart. The energy exploded outward. The satellites saw the flash. The people heard the boom. And for a brief moment, America looked up and realized that something far beyond human control had just announced itself in the sky. So no, this was not a missile. It was not an earthquake. It was not an attack. It was a rock from space, moving at terrifying speed, burning through the atmosphere, breaking apart above New England, and releasing a blast powerful enough to make people from Massachusetts to beyond stop and ask what had just happened. And maybe that is the most important part of the story. Not that the meteor exploded, but that something so small, so distant, and so fast could shake people so deeply, physically, emotionally, and psychologically, without ever touching the ground. Because the next time the sky flashes, the next time a boom rolls across a city, the next time windows rattle, and people run outside looking for answers, the first question will not be whether it was dramatic. The first question will be whether we understand what we're looking at before fear takes over. And in this case, the answer came from science, from satellites, from witness reports, and from the hard data left behind by a fireball over the Northeast. But the feeling it left behind is something data alone cannot erase. A reminder that above every city, above every home, above every quiet afternoon, there is a sky full of motion. And sometimes, it speaks with the force of an explosion. If you found this story important, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next update. And let us know in the comments, when you hear about a mysterious boom in the sky, do you think people should be worried? Or is this simply nature reminding us how powerful the universe really is?